hi everyone. I will do the honors of sort of moderating this talk, but I will of course speak myself as well, as I like to do it very much. But thanks everyone for joining us for this panel where we talk about borderless businesses and how this can be done through secure identities. Because we had a little bit of a discussion before back in the speakers lounge where we said most governments offer their identities through private sector, so it's or normally like a bank offered secure identity. Whereas Estonia, which is the country where I come from, we have a fully state-offered secure digital identity. And with the identity, you can do 99.9% of the things online, including voting. We just had general elections in Estonia, and more than 50% of the people cast their votes online. You can declare your taxes in 1 minute. You can open up a company in 15 minutes and 33 seconds. So anything you need to do in interaction with the state, you can do online, including proposing to someone to get married. But we're here today to talk a bit more about how the business making functions. So I mentioned you can open up a company really fast, you can declare your taxes fast, everything that you have to do with the state you can do online. And Estonia in 2014 decided to expand this concept to foreigners as well. So it's not only Estonians who can win from this secure digital identity, but anyone, including from this room, can apply and become an e-resident of Estonia. And we have one e-resident here, and Christian is a super successful one. So Christian, maybe you can share a bit about your experience, how you became a digital citizen.
It's, I come from a very challenging economy in Latin America. I'm coming from Buenos Aires, Argentina. But I live in Spain, and I used to have a company here in Spain. We sold it in 2019, and so because we work in the music industry, it's a very international business, and we needed to work with, for example, America, and we need to work with the UK, and we need to work with Europe. So I was trying to find a solution, and I came across this blog post online that was about Estonia and e-residency. And it was very easy, it was very smooth, the process to open the company, to register myself as an e-resident, which means that I can be there without being there, kind of thing. Because I could open my company there. Well, first I've applied to the, and of course we have to, well, they have in Estonia, they have to check if I'm a good guy, of course. So it seems that I am. So I got my e-residence card, and I went to the embassy here in Madrid, picked it up, and then in 15 minutes I opened my company, and I was operating with everybody around the world, which was incredible for me because coming, as said, from this very challenging economy in Argentina, or going to these situations when we sold the company here in Spain, and struggling with a kind of, well, we can say maybe some bureaucracy here, as everywhere and all around the world, right? Yep. But then it was all everything smooth. Accounts, invoicing and uploading, and everything was done. I'm a musician, I'm a singer-songwriter. I don't want to struggle with figures, so this was perfect with this. So a lot of other companies that we work with, for example, in Colombia or in Venezuela or in my country, Argentina, a lot of musicians, a lot of people that works in the creative arts started to onboard to the program as well, because suddenly they could invoice to Universal Music or Warner Music or Sony Music with a legal invoice without struggling. And thanks to the system that Estonia has in terms of digital identity, we have a card. I think I have it here. I think I do, yeah. So we have here. This is my e-residency card. And with this, I'm paying taxes and signing papers and doing everything, even if I'm traveling, which I do a lot. So it's easy for me, it's easy for everyone. So this works pretty well, and there are several countries in the world that have this kind of digital identity, right, Jason?
Yeah, so just a big background about myself. So my name is Jason Quack. The Global CTO at Delta G Cloud. Delta Team is a premium IT consulting firm. And we have offices in 18 countries all around EMEA. So we have one right here in Madrid and also one in Barcelona. Our primary business is about moving customers to the cloud. And on the side, also, I work as a mentor for Google for startups. So one of the key factors, and one question I can raise to the audience, is that if you're a product owner today, if you're running your own company, how many of you integrate with a single sign-on provider? For example, Google, login, or Microsoft, or one of these providers? Can you raise your hand?
One there.
So now maybe it's about 50% of the audience integrates with a provider that helps you manage your identity, right? The rest of you perhaps manage your own identity, which means it's all distributed. Which means that when you start to ask, hey, who actually you are, is based on what you created an account with. For example, if you boil it down back, all the way back to when you sign on to your product, it's actually based on something as simple as email. So actually, email is one of the most predominant source of identification. But email by itself is not a trustworthy source. Because logging in, creating an email account can take seconds. And this is kind of the state of identity today, is that you have mass spam, mass bots that can create identities, fake identities, and impersonate you on the web. And that's one key thing that we help do with customers and companies to make sure they can integrate and make sure they can improve their management identity. And this is very important. So you mentioned Estonia. It's really a good example of how they manage identity very well because they built a strong infrastructure, IT infrastructure backbone to manage it. I come from Singapore. So in Singapore also is very government driven. So the government actually created what I call the SingPass, which actually is a one-stop shop of identity. You can use it to log in all to websites, you can do tax declarations, and makes business smooth. You can create a bank account, you can create a phone line, all within seconds, using this identity that you have verified from day one. So the potential to create and onboard the customers is amazing. The more you integrate against a standard form of identity. And this is key. And you see it's very different ways approach. Like for example, in Singapore, I now actually stay in Sweden for the last 15 years. Like you mentioned, they use banks as a form of identification. Because when you create a bank account, so all the biggest banks in Sweden formed together and created what I call the bank ID. So you can use it to do your taxes, to log in, to transfer money, as well as open a new phone line and any kind of activities. And we see that by integrating to this standard source of identity, businesses are able to innovate. So right now you can use it to do even more activities like list your real estate on a website, verify that you have ownership of the real estate so that you're not listing someone else's house for sale, like it happened on Airbnb, for example. So identity is very important to understand what to integrate against, how to protect it, how to encrypt it, how to defend against malicious attackers looking to steal identity as well.
I think the crucial part about this is trust, right? So, I mean, it can be the bank who provides you the identity if you trust the bank.
Yes.
It should be your own government, but I mean, I also teach at the university, and I always ask my students, do you trust your government? And you can imagine, not all of the people trust their own government, right? And in Estonia, we do, because we've never had any major disasters. And by the way, Estonia was the first country against whom a cyber attack was launched in 2007. So we had a full-blown cyber attack. It was a series of DDoS attacks by our eastern neighbor towards Estonia. And of course, some of the systems went down, like the bank websites or the government websites, but no data was leaked because we use a distributed data exchange system in Estonia. So the e-residency card or Estonian national ID, they don't hold any data. I mean, on the card, physically, you can see the name and the personal identity code, but it bears a microchip, and you have your authenticator. So basically, this gives you an access to those services. So that's why people trust it, because it's distributed. And it's very much regulated who can access what data. So for instance, the police can see your criminal records, the tax and customs authority can see your tax data, but the doctor can never see your tax data, such as the police can never see your medical records. And this is the key thing about the people trusting, because nothing has ever blown up. And when something did, like the 2007 cyber attacks, we were very, very openly discussing about this. So people knew what happened. We were very transparent, and this is the key, right? So transparency, when you're an e-resident or when you run your business, I assume transparency is the one thing you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yesterday I was uploading our annual report to the government website where you can, well, the accountants, they send you the annual report, so you have to upload it, and you can sign the annual report with the card that I was showing you. And so, for example, I was telling this to one of my partners that lives in my country, in Argentina. And I was telling, well, yeah, I'm uploading here the annual report, blah, blah, blah. So then we can have, you know, the accounts there, and everybody can check actually online. You can go online and you can check how much we're making every year, right? And these can help you if you're looking for funding, for example, if you're looking, and if you're an e-resident, you can apply for funding or you can apply for grants in Estonia, even if you've never been there. So I was telling this to my partner in Argentina and saying, well, we need a company there, and you can have it, you know. And this is because it's trustable. It's about trust.
Yep.
And you know, when we're showing, for example, in America, I remember at the beginning, somebody was saying, one of our clients in America, he was saying, well, where do you have your company? I say, well, in Estonia. So automatically, he was thinking about the east of Europe, right? Very close to some other countries there. And this is 2019. One of my first invoices there. But it was a big client. It was a big label, record label. But then everything was smooth. And he said, but do you have a USD bank account? Yes, we do. With Wise, formerly TransferWise, which is an Estonian company.
Unicorn.
And yeah.
An Estonian unicorn.
An Estonian unicorn, exactly. And maybe many of us here, we have a TransferWise or Wise account to work internationally or to spend in different currencies. So it was perfect for us. And I remember needing like bank statements, and now you can download your statements with a seal, official
government stamp.
Government and bank
But not a
seal.
physical stamp, a digital one.
No, it's digital, but from TransferWise. And again, me coming from this challenging economy in Argentina, it's like, wow, it works, you know? So this is how great it is to have something that is based in trust, in digital identity, and yeah, mostly trust, basically.
Definitely. And you see just how he showed you the card with microchip. This is a standard example of multi-factor authentication.
Absolutely.
So implementation using biometrics to increase the security level of identity to the next level. So for example, you can see in the US, identity is controlled by the private sector, right? You have your Google, you have your Microsoft, your Azure, Outlook, and Okta. So these are kind of identity providers. And the government kind of takes a step back in that case. Well, then all the owners is based on the private company, which means that if there's any leakage, they have to be responsible in terms of fines. But it's not their primary business as well. You know, you want something that is driven from regulatory compliance. So someone to write a policy and says that we must increase the level of security and demand it of the companies. Because if you don't demand it of the companies will not follow. I see that very often as well. So like, for example, a good example is GDPR. So with GDPR as well, it made the idea of identity to the forefront. Because you must comply with the right to be forgotten. So which means that I can go to any company in the Europe Union.
Any search engine.
Yeah, any search engine. It's extraterritorial laws as well, which means it applies to any company outside of the EU that has information of EU citizens. And you can tell them, I want to be forgotten, which means that remove my identity from your database. And with that, they have to find a way to track your identity, collate it, and link everything in one clean way to remove it from their systems. And you have to ask yourself as a startup owner, as a startup founder, or as like entrepreneur, how much time you want to invest in solving that problem. So that problem can be solved through the government or through the private sector by trusted advisors and trusted sources of authority. So I think it's about demanding what you need from the banks or from the government depending on what is the most pragmatic way forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned the super important keyword, which is time. So time is the only resource that we're running out of, right? So, I mean, you have to trust the services, of course, but it's about time management. So in Estonia, and mostly in Europe, but in Estonia especially, so what we sell with e-residency is not that, oh, we have a plastic card, start using it. What we sell is the business environment of Estonia. And why the business environment of Estonia is special is because it's the most hassle-free business environment in the world. Like on average, in European countries, it takes you 10% of all of the time that you have handling your company on government bureaucracy, declaring taxes, filing documents, finding a lawyer, doing this, doing that. So in Estonia, you spend the bare minimum amount of time because all the data is already there, and the government agencies and also the private sector share the data that they're allowed to share, that they have the right to share between one another. So it's hassle-free, it's easy, it's convenient. And right now, my team is taking it to the next level. So currently, you reach out to the business registry to launch your company, you apply for finances from somewhere, you apply for your economic licenses from elsewhere. So we're building a single point of contact on the eesti.ee landing page where you can do all the processes throughout the life cycle of your company from one single page. From really starting the company to applying for the economic licenses do you need, to figuring out what sort of funding you're eligible for, because this is a huge issue. Many companies are actually eligible for different government funding, but they don't know this because they don't even know where to get this information from. So the single point of contact that we're building, so basically there, the AI-based system will already tell you in advance, so you are operating in this field. By the way, you should apply for this economic license, and also you're eligible for this funding. And we're also building a machine learning system into the single point of contact, which will help micro companies, because 94% of Estonian companies are micro companies, to actually do their financial decisions. Because my boyfriend is a CEO of starting startup, so he says he's doing 10 to 20 different roles, because if you're a CEO of a starting startup, this is what you need to do. So this is your financial assistant from the government telling you, you should price your product or your service differently, you should hire or fire people, you should do some pricing changes in order for you not to become insolvent. And this is how we see the business system in Estonia. Us as governments should help the companies. We should help them, start, grow. And this is why Estonia has the most unicorns per capita in Europe and the second most unicorns per capita in the world after Israel. Is because we feel we should be there for the companies, not make their lives more difficult, right?
Yes. In our case, for example, when we have these discussions with some colleagues in the music industry, and we were talking about, well, I want to apply as a record label, because you manage some acts, and you have some artists in your roster. So you want to, for example, submit some of them to win a Grammy or a Latin Grammy, and maybe you need to have a company for that. So we did it. In 2020, we did it. And I think we are the only Estonian company that won a Latin Grammy in 2020, submitting our company based in Estonia. Actually, when we were filling the forms, they were saying, oh, maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you meant El Salvador. Maybe you meant España. No, Estonia, it's all right. So, all this ease of doing business, it's really great for challenging economies or systems that you don't want to deal with. These struggling mostly in the creative arts. We don't want to want to struggle with figures. We don't want to struggle. We just want to write songs and that's it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, one of the use cases we help a company do as well is about today when you create a song, you upload it to YouTube or SoundCloud. Yep. How do you prove that is your song?
It's your song, yeah.
Yeah. How do you prove it from day one?
How does copyright function in the cloud?
How do you stop an AI-generated music to generate and base off your song as training data to generate their own songs? So actually now we're doing what I call encryption and hashing. So we're actually signing songs with the identity of the person who created it before they upload SoundCloud. So they can say that, yes, this is my timestamp. I have signed it on this date, I put it in a blockchain, and I can prove without a doubt I came to it first. And then you can work on that. And I think these are the kind of nice use cases that come up when you start to utilize a lot of things like decentralized identity to secure your digital assets. And you think about it in that terms as well, because like a digital asset can be anything. It's your ideas, it's your code. So like for example, code. Code is one of the biggest digital assets in the world right now. Oh. GitHub, code. So like I actually contribute a lot to open source as well. So when you log into GitHub and you do submit your code, it gets linked to your identity, which is a GitHub identity, to prove that you wrote the code first to prevent companies from making it closed source. You want to have open source technology. But the thing is that my identity is based on an email address, you know? So technically, I have to prove, if it goes all the way back, you have to prove to myself that I am actually owner of this email address at Gmail, which is kind of ironic because in the end, it should be based on almost a governmental aspect.
Exactly, and you bring out like a super valuable point, because this is the problem with most countries in the world, that actually all of us have several identities. We anyway have. I mean, your LinkedIn identity is not the same as your Instagram identity. It's not as your government identity where you declare your taxes from. And this is what we try to limit in Estonia, that you have one single identity to do all interactions with. So we are all assigned a personal ID code. Literally, when a newborn baby is born in Estonia, the nurse clicks in the information system, add a newborn, and a new personal code is being calculated. And this is your name throughout your life cycle, whatever interactions you do with public or private sector. And I love that you mentioned open source. And by the way, this X-Road, which is the distributed data exchange layer in Estonia, it's open source. Any government in the world can come and take it and use the same distributed data exchange layer. And so far, only Finland and Iceland have done that from Europe, but also Ukraine, also numerous Latin American countries. So different countries around the world have done it, but why not use it if it works somewhere? And this is how we approach things in Estonia. If it works somewhere, use it. We copy-pasted our ID card from Finland, but we made it work. I mean, we made it mandatory. And I know there's an ID card in Spain, but to use the digital identity part of it is not mandatory. But of course, you're not going to get an uptake of users if you don't make these things mandatory. We make it mandatory, but we also keep the systems open source. And we invite different companies from around the world to come hack our systems to help build new services based on Estonian GovStack, basically, based on what we are offering open source. Because this is how we trust our systems, and this is how we want others to come and pitch in. And I mean, going back to opening businesses, of course, this is digital, what I mentioned, but the rest of the process needs to be hassle-free, otherwise people are not going to use it.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think now that we live in this global society, global world, I think it's essential to find a way that we can all work together, right? Like
Absolutely.
Maybe, I don't know if it's going to be like, well, time-stamping things or hashing or blockchain. I think that could work well as well. But, you know, to put everybody in the world to agree, all of them, I think it's difficult.
Yeah, I think it's about...
It's a challenge.
For sure. It's about demanding standardization. And because my background is in the computer engineering, standardization is the key to everything. But you must want to change. The governments want to change. They must want to work together. So one of the key questions I posed to Sandra from day one is that why not do this at the EU level?
Yeah.
It's like, why solve the problem at like 20 different countries within the EU where you can just solve it one time?
We have great examples like, well, Estonia, the Estonian system works. Yeah. There are some other working as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, so in Estonia, we have this e-Estonia briefing center where we invite governments around the world to see how we've done things and copy-paste from us. We're right now copy-pasting the Ukrainian mobile app for government citizens because it works in Ukraine, so of course we're going to adopt this here. But the most mindset in the countries in Europe is, we can't do this. Okay, it works in Estonia, you're so small. You know what, we're so small, we also don't have the same amount of money such as Germany to test those things. So the reason we came up with this distributed data exchange layer was because we were too poor at the end of 1990s to afford the different databases for all services. So we said, okay, we're not going to build one centralized database, but we're going to make the different databases connect with one another. And then it seemed, okay, decentralization is the way to go. But we are experimenting licensing. We're treating the government as a place where you can use the services as a sandbox where you can test things. I mean, and if you fail, we just fail. And if you talk to my friends in other countries, they say, oh, nice that it works for you, but it's never going to work in our country. And this is the approach why we don't have the cross-border digital services in Europe.
Understand.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, coming from Latin America, I think that would be great to agree and to stop thinking about, well, you're so small. I mean, how many companies started that small and then became big, right? So maybe we can just, use these great examples of great tax systems and digital ID systems as a business case for some other countries or the rest of the world, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I think also it comes a little bit from the culture.
Yeah.
In different countries have culture. So some countries trust in the government. Some countries trust in the private sector, in innovation more. So I think
Some
it really...
trust no one.
Some trust no one. Yeah. And that's actually good. A zero
But
trust.
they always trust Facebook.
A zero trust.
Oh.
That's that's a different question. But identity itself is an asset. Right now, if you go, so I also work in the security area, and right now we have a lot of collaboration with different threat intelligence companies like Mandiant and FireEye. So one of the key things they always see on the dark web is that they are selling chunks of identity for sale. That's the number one single resource for sale on the dark web. Is that you can buy entire logs of like 100, 200,000 email accounts. You can use to impersonate Netflix accounts, so on and so forth. And so do not let your identity become a resource to be sold. So you have to defend it. You have to understand who's the attacker. You have to know how to encrypt it, how to make sure that it can be removed if needed. Yeah, and use all these cutting-edge technologies to do it. And I think it's good to do now before you suffer a major breach. And it's going to bound to happen eventually. So
I mean, our time is running up. My only question left is, why are you not an e-resident yet? And for those of you who are interested in e-residency, we have a booth. If you just come inside, we're in the middle. You can see a big blue booth. I will be sitting there. Come have some chat with us and learn more about e-residency. And I hope by the end of the day, we're going to have more e-residents from here. We only have 100,000 now, and the Estonian entire population is 1.3 million. So 100,000 is pretty big. So come hear more from us, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.